Hey, what's up y'all, it's your boy Turts, back at it again. After finishing playing and making a video on Doom Eternal, I started to play a game called Mini Healer. For those who don't know, Mini Healer is based on the gameplay of healers in MMOs. The gameplay concept is very simple. You control a healer as you and your party grind and fight different bosses. You get a set of skills to choose from, talents that have passive effects or augment your skills, and different items to customize your healer. Like a lot of MMOs, you get to choose between different styles of healers. You can be a straightforward healer, you can focus on buffs or debuffs, or you can even just blend different styles together to make what you want. Of course, like most RPGs, there's always an optimal setup for each boss fight. In the playthrough I had, I decided to focus mostly on the priest talent tree while stacking auras and targeted heals. Even though I only played for about 6 hours, I think I got a pretty good general feel of the game. What I really like about Mini Healer is that it's very quick to pick up and start playing. You start the game, get a quick run through, and then you begin playing. There isn't a lot of tutorial or fluff that's obstructing you from just getting into it. For someone like me who's pretty impatient, it was nice to be able to quickly get into the game. I think that style of quick start really works for this kind of game. I'm currently streaming Red Dead Redemption 2, and that's a game I expect to lead you into the gameplay. It's a large, expansive game that tries to immerse you into its world and its story. Mini Healer, on the other hand, isn't a Red Dead Redemption 2. It's a smaller indie game. It's not like an actual MMO that ties the story with the gameplay. It throws you into the thick of it, not worrying about any connecting story at all. So for me, being able to get into the meat of the game very quickly was a net positive. The actual gameplay was also something I was pleasantly surprised by. To be honest, I wasn't expecting a lot out of the game when I first bought it. However, after playing it, I realized how my expectations were wrong. While not as intense as healing in an actual MMO, Mini's healer gameplay still requires the player to be active and aware. Like I said in my Doom Eternal video, I really enjoy when games make the player be persistently engaged. In my experience, I was able to progress to the subsequent zone without quite matching the level of the zone. This meant I was a little underleveled each fight, unless I decided to grind to catch up on levels. In these underleveled encounters, I'd often be forced to use my heals off cooldown and maintain buffs constantly to keep my party healthy and strong. I'd have to balance my cooldowns with my depleting mana pool while keeping track of buffs and debuffs, while also making sure no one in my party was dying. At a certain point, I did reach a setup where in some boss fights, my tank would take a minuscule amount of damage, allowing me to focus on 3 instead of 4 characters. Until then though, it was a challenge to try and last long enough to DPS down a boss before dying. Which actually brings me to the next thing I liked about the game, customizability. Not able to beat a boss? Well then, like most MMOs, that means it's time to grind and gear up. Also, like MMOs, each boss has a particular loot table while also dropping a general amount of random loot. Having the option of grinding fights to get better gear while also leveling felt very in tune with other RPG gameplay loops of grind and fight. That really helped the overall feel of the game, as it helped to be more like an actual RPG and not just a game mimicking a RPG. Which honestly, I kind of thought it would just be a game parodying another gameplay style. Being able to grind fights provided a layer of depth and required the player to make conscious choices about the items and talents they wanted to take. Speaking of talents, what I also really enjoy about the game is that it shows you the future talents and skills you get so that you can plan around them. However, if you do decide to commit to a talent tree that doesn't work out, the game allows you to freely redo your talent tree whenever you want. It lets you freely decide how you want your passives to be, but doesn't make you spend time trying to undo your commitment. In a game like Path of Exile, passive tree choices you make are more solidified because that's the kind of game that wants an opportunity cost in the decisions you make. Whereas in Mini Healer, you still need to be able to make good choices, but it gives you the leeway and freedom to explore ideas. This is especially important when this game is just one long boss rush. Being able to redo your talent tree freely lets you customize your playstyle per fight. Finally, I think another big benefit to a game like Mini Healer is that it's cheap. A pretty commonly used measurement of a game's buyability is the price of the game. Obviously, in an ideal world, people would only consider a game for the quality and not the price. Regardless though, Mini Healer, when I purchased it, was only $7.99 on Steam. To put my value into a monetary context, I played the game for about 6 hours and spent about $8 on it, which means it's almost $1 per hour played, and I absolutely could and probably at one point will spend more time on it. If you consider $1 per hour as pretty good bang for your buck for playing a video game, then this game sounds like a pretty good value to me. With all that said, there were some things I would have liked to see. First, I wish you could view your inventory and talents from anywhere in the game. Outside of going back to the starting zone, there was no way for me to look at my inventory or talents. This meant if I wanted to compare a new item I found, or if I wanted to double check my talents to see what I'm getting, I couldn't. So anytime I wanted to check them, I would have to go back to the starting zone. Fortunately though, it was one quick click to the starting zone and a few clicks to check everything. So while not the worst thing ever, being able to look at my stats, talents, or inventory from anywhere would have been really convenient. Another thing I would have liked would be the ability to control the location of buffs and debuffs, or at least have a way to keep them more distinct. The buffs and debuffs are color coded, which while nice, becomes a little problematic when you have a lot of either on any given character. The visual clarity of being able to more easily see buffs and debuffs on my allies would help a lot, especially when I'm trying to pay attention to a lot of different things. Something simple like having one row of buffs and one row of debuffs would make it a lot easier to see things. Lastly, I wish that boss fights had more mechanics associated with them. It's possible further along in the game, there are fights with more complicated mechanics, but based on what I saw, the mechanics were kind of scarce and kind of simple. One boss fight involved clicking on enemies as they spawn to kill them, and another involved alternating who you're targeting. Those are the kind of mechanical challenges I liked, and I wish I saw more of them in what I played. It helps separate different bosses and their identity, and also furthers each individual boss's gameplay uniqueness. Rather than just focusing purely on healing each fight, the mechanics added another layer of gameplay to the fights. I do want to also acknowledge two things for the last two critiques. One, I think it could be interpreted as contradictory to ask for better buff and debuff clarity, while also asking for more difficult mechanics. Asking for better clarity is making the game easier, and asking for more mechanics is asking for the game to be harder, obviously. The difference being is I don't think being able to overcome visual clutter is skill, whereas asking for more mechanics challenges the player and their ability to play the game. I do also want to clarify again that I don't really think the buffs and debuffs were that cluttered. They were still pretty visible, but again, there were points where I had trouble seeing them. Second, I think adding more complicated mechanics can lead the game to be, well, more complicated. I think a lot of games benefit from not trying to be too complicated, and I think Mini Healer is one of those kind of games. The higher complexity game you have, the harder it is for new players to enter your game, and vice versa. The lower the complexity of your mechanics, the easier it is for new players to enter your game. Like I said earlier, this is a cheap game that is partially fun for me because of its pickup and playability. For someone like me, it's a lot harder to pick up a game when it's pretty difficult. If I'm playing a hard game, I need to be able to commit the time to be willing to try again to progress. Take my playthrough of Doom Eternal for example. When I bought that game, I knew I was going to play it on a harder difficulty, and I knew I would die regularly. I came into that game with the expectation of difficulty and having to overcome repeat challenges. This game, however, I wasn't expecting an intense difficulty. There were sections of course where I couldn't beat a boss, but that felt easy to overcome by grinding and gearing up. That wouldn't be the case though if the mechanics were difficult, which aren't always something you can outgrind. Fortunately though, in a game like this, you can gate the complicated mechanics behind later boss fights. To wrap it all up, I think the game stayed pretty focused overall. It knew what kind of game it wanted it to be, and the gameplay matched it. It evokes gameplay of a MMO healer. It's an easy to access game. You don't need to do a lot of learning or research before you play the game to do well. There are a lot of talent and skill configurations, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Likewise, being able to reallocate your talents and skills helps accessibility. It also allows an exploration of different ideas. It's an engaging game with very active gameplay, just like a healer in an MMO. And finally, it's a very cheap game. It's something short and sweet, you could even call it mini, that you can buy and play for a few hours. I had a lot of fun playing, and will probably play it again in the future. If you liked the video, consider subscribing to my channel. If you have any constructive feedback, please let me know in the comments. I'm always looking to try and improve where I can. If you're interested in following me on Twitter, my handle is TurtsTV. If you want to see me live, I stream on Twitch from Thursday to Monday at twitch.tv/Turts. Both of those will be linked in the description below. Before I go, I'll leave y'all some gameplay I recorded. Thanks for watching, I'll catch y'all next time.